Hey everybody, it's Kyle Jetzel, your driven autism dad. Today I want to talk about something that was a little bit shocking to me when I first learned it. And I'll kind of tell you the story and then kind of tell you the conclusion I came to. And it's really a bit unnerving. And the idea may offend you. So I want to let you know right up front that you may be offended, but also I want you to know that if you'll accept this as, and if it is the situation for you, you're going to be so much further advanced. So I'll never forget um, the day that my wife and I had a real big, nasty argument over our kids on the spectrum. We had just faced a really big, giant meltdown. It was a 4-hour meltdown, and we kind of came to a tipping point, my wife and I, where we were either going to figure some stuff out or our family was going to be in real trouble and ruin. And I remember, being really angry and frustrated and discouraged because we had done everything the experts and the therapists and the specialists had told us, and we were still struggling at home with meltdowns and overwhelm, and we were feeling isolated, and all the things that happen when you have a child that is having some real big behaviors and big issues with autism. And I remember going out in the front yard and really not knowing what else to do, and just being so frustrated and aggravated. And I remembered just thinking, I don't know what else to do, so I'm just going to pray about this. And I remember kneeling under a pecan tree in my front yard and just praying to God and saying, what do I do? I just don't know what to do. I really am lost. I've done everything the experts have suggested. I've I'm trying my best. I really don't know what else to do. I don't want to leave my family. I don't want to. I'm not getting along with my wife. My two older sons, typical boys, were uh, unhappy. My relationships with everybody in my life was really in trouble, and I could see things starting to crumble and fall apart. And so I remember as I prayed, I don't really remember what I said, but I do remember a feeling I got that was really very unnerving. And that was this feeling. And the feeling was the problem is not society, or the problem is not your wife, your spouse, the problem is not your kids, the problem is you. And I remember feeling like that was the message I needed to receive in that moment. It was really kind of tough to take because, man, I had been working so hard. I'd been trying so hard. I had been doing everything I thought I knew how to do. And I remember wanting to argue with God about that, right? And it can't be me. I mean, I'm trying so hard, right? I'm taking him to all the therapies and the specialists and the experts, and we're spending all this money. And, I'm doing my best to help give him the love he needs and the discipline and, and support my wife and my kids. And it was just all failing me. And so hearing that message in that moment was really tough. But also it reminded me of a lesson my mom had taught me when I was probably 11 or 12 years old. And I remember I grew up with two older brothers, one younger brother, and one younger sister. So a family of five kids, and I was right in the middle. And so I always felt like I was getting picked on from above and below. And, being a middle child, I think that's kind of how we feel sometimes. But I remember getting into a fight with can't remember if it was my older or younger brother. I think it was my younger brother at one point. And, and my mom coming to me and and I was complaining about my younger brother. And she said, you know what? You can't change anybody else. The only person you can change is you. You can't change your younger brother or your older brother or anybody else. The only person you can change is you. And so I recalled this story after I started really thinking about the fact that I was the problem in my family. What could I change about me? What things could I look at in detail that I could control about me? Because I couldn't control my spouse or the society or my kids on the spectrum or my typical kids. All I could do was control me and my thoughts and reactions. And so I kind of started on this journey of learning how to better manage myself and creating strategies and tactics for myself that allowed me to, when things started to go wrong and when things started to get tough, how would I manage myself better so that I could calm the chaos instead of joining in? And I think that's what we all struggle with, right? As parents, when things start to go horribly wrong, a lot of us go into fight or flight, or freeze mode or whatever the case may be. And that really doesn't help our kids. It doesn't help our spouse. It doesn't help our typical kids. And it certainly doesn't help us when we fall into those patterns. And so I started making an effort to change myself, right? The problem was me. And that's the attitude I took. When things start to go wrong, the problem is me. And it led me down the path of learning some strategies and tactics that allowed me to better manage myself when things went horribly wrong. And as I started to do that, I started to see some dramatic changes in my family, not because I was expecting it, but more because it was just a natural part of the process. When I started changing, I had certain patterns that I would fall into when things started to go wrong, or when there were meltdowns, or when there were behavior problems, or when my wife was exhausted and discouraged and frustrated with me. There were patterns I would fall into automatically. And so as I started trying to better manage myself and change my patterns, changing my patterns, I saw others change their patterns. And it dramatically changed our family and transformed our family. And if you want to know more information about how that happened, you can get a copy of my book. I'll put it in the comments below. But I want to challenge you, mom, dad, whichever one you are, whether you're married or single, to take responsibility. The problem is not your child on the spectrum. The problem is not the way society treats them. The problem is not your typical kids. The problem is not your spouse. Accept that the problem is you, because you can change you. You can make adjustments to how you do things and take action in changing how you manage certain situations in your life. Decide to change you and watch what starts to happen. If you want some help with that, grab a copy of my book. Hopefully that's helpful. I know it's hard to hear. It was hard for me to hear, but it was so powerful when I started to take personal responsibility for my own actions and how I manage situations. It started a process of transformation for our family. And over a period of time, we turned into what my wife and I, prior to her passing, called the top 1% happy marriage and a top 1% happy family, even as we raised these kids on the spectrum, even as we face meltdowns and behaviors and defiance and all those things that you're struggling with right now. As we started to better manage them, better manage ourselves in those situations, our kids' patterns started to change. And that's really where we saw dramatic transformation in the happiness in our home. And it changed our family forever. So hopefully that's helpful. If there's anything I can do, let me know. First of all, grab a copy of my book, and hopefully that's helpful. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.